Hey there, and welcome to Your Worth Your Way, the podcast that's all about helping you understand that you are worthy of prioritizing your own joy without feeling selfish or guilty. I'm Debbie Lucas, the Joy Alchemist, and each week I'll be bringing you honest, heartfelt conversations with incredible guests, coaches, thought leaders, and soulful humans who share their stories and insights on self-worth, confidence, personal growth, and how to create a life that feels authentically yours. This isn't about quick fixes or cookie cutter advice. It's about real talk, practical takeaways, and plenty of soulful inspiration to help you live life your way. So grab your favorite cuppa, get comfy, and let's dive into today's episode. Today, I am joined by the wonderful Danielle Thornton-Walker, a qualified a qualified transformational coach and meditation teacher, and founder of Danielle Louise Coaching, specializing in self-love. She supports women to reawaken a new way of living, one deeply rooted in self-compassion, confidence, and wholeheartedly expressing and celebrating who they are. And we'll be diving into personal growth, self-worth, confidence, alignment, and living authentically. Everything that this podcast is about. So I'm delighted to have you on with me today, Danielle, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Thank you so much for inviting me to join and to have this conversation. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and as we were talking about before we started recording there, we've been connected on LinkedIn for a long time now. Gosh, I don't even know how long, and kind of been, conversing through posts and DMs. So I know a lot about what you do, and I know kind of everything that you stand for. But please share a little bit more about your story and what led to the work that you're doing for my audience.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Debbie. So my work is very much about helping women to recenter themselves. So deep self-love, deep self-care. Often women come to me because they're feeling like they're stuck on the hamster wheel, they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling like they've lost themselves, like they've lost that spark and enjoyment. And often they then want to, progress in their career, or they want to make some changes in their life, but it's about coming back to themselves. So supporting them to be able to learn to nurture themselves, honor themselves, celebrate themselves. And what I then see is, and the women tell me, is that they then find that inner confidence, that inner belief, rather than constantly seeking it outside of themselves, that they then can say, oh, okay, I've got this voice that matters. I've got opinions that matter. I've got a body and a life that's worth honoring and nurturing and nourishing. And then the things that they want, the success, the fulfillment, the happiness, the joy, all of that comes, but from the inside out. So in terms of where this came from, I was very much one of those people who pushed myself a lot, a high achiever, very ambitious, but it came from a place of wanting to prove because I never felt enough. So growing up, that's how I felt. And I struggled a lot with my mental health when I was younger and dipped in and out of that. And then fast forward to when my little boy was born, and it felt like this was the ultimate test. How can I be the best mum? How can I, be the best wife, be the best mum? And of course, a child doesn't give you any validation with that. And quite often when they're young, it seems the opposite. Well, why is he crying all the time? Why can't he sleep? All of this made me think, well, I'm just not a good enough mum. I can't cope. If I was better, then I'd be able to cope better. And my mental health took a massive dip and I got really sick. And it got to a point where I had to make a choice. And I was very much on my knees with making this choice. And ended up at the doctors saying something's going to have to change, because honestly, Debbie, I don't think I would have survived, like, being really honest. So I'd like to say, like, it was a conscious choice. It was I kind of felt like there was nothing else like to give. It was, I've got to get better for my son. And that started me on the path to therapy, and then working with a coach. And the therapy was amazing and it supported me lots, but the coaching is what really started to turn things around for me, because it helped me realize I wasn't broken, I didn't need fixing, but the way that I was looking at myself was so judgmental. I was constantly seeking things outside of myself to try and fix. You know, if I, you know, get better as a mom, if I get a better job, if I earn more money, all of these things, then I'll be enough. But it was just constantly pushing the goalpost further away. So it was only by learning to slowly, bit by bit, be kinder to myself, be more compassionate, start to prioritize what I needed and move through that guilt of, you know, and letting go of that story of I need to be everything to everyone, that my life started to change. And that started me on this path. And then I found meditation, I found breath work, I found lots of other things that support the, you know, the service that I now share with my clients. But it was from that inside job. And, you know, I kind of, what I thought broke me, which was at the time becoming a mum, I thought it broke me, was actually breaking me open to be the very best of me and rediscover me. So I'm forever grateful to my little boy who struggled to sleep so much as a child, because without that, maybe I wouldn't have remembered who I am.
Oh, wow. I had goosebumps the whole time you were talking there. I think so much of what you shared will resonate with every person who listens to this who has gone through that journey of motherhood. And even if you haven't, I think a lot of people go through it just maybe in a different way. It could be, in whatever role that they're playing in life. And I think a couple of things, well, everything resonated, but some of the things that really stood out for me was that bit about from the inside out. And your honesty and vulnerability there, and how deep and dark it got, but maybe not at the time that you realized you had to take care of yourself first to be able to be there for your boy, to get back to your son as you described there. And instead of looking outside of yourself for the validation and the fixes, because we can't control what's outside of ourselves. We can't control how people respond, what people do, what happens in the wider context of the world and society and governments and our countries. We can only be responsible for what happens within ourselves. And your journey so beautifully shows how, when you take care of yourself and look after yourself, how you can be a better person for everybody around you. And it really just epitomizes that, filling your own cup first, and then everybody then enjoy the abundance and the overflow that comes from that once your cup is full. It's not even pouring from your own cup, because that's yours. Is about the joy and the love for yourself that spills out into everything else that you do.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for seeing me and for reflecting that back to me, Debbie. And as you probably saw, it's still emotional when I go back to that time, but I'm so proud of it. And it is something that at the time I felt so much shame around, but now I feel so proud of it. But it was very much that thing. It was, I need to get better. I need to fix myself to be better for my son. I need to fix myself so that I'm a better wife. That was very much where it came from.
Yeah.
I wasn't there saying, oh, I need to get better for me. And I think that's very much the narrative that we get taught, that we grow up, that everything we're doing should be for someone else. But going through that helped me see, actually, no, this needs to be about me.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I think, certainly, probably, my story, your story, a lot of other people's stories, it might start with that. And that might be the kind of catalyst of you're doing it for like the person that you love the most, which usually is your children. But then, as you say, once you start going deeper, and once, as you say, that breaking open bit happens, then you realize, no, it is about me. And I think that, you know, this podcast is a lot about, you know, comes from my own journey of feeling selfish for doing that and feeling selfish for even wanting to do that. But actually, it's one of my guests, I think it was Susan Murray in episode 2. She's a good friend of mine, and she often talks about, she doesn't use the word selfish, she talks about self first, but from a very much that nurturing self-worth perspective. And I absolutely love that. And I think I was going to say something else there. Oh gosh, it's gone now. I'll come back to me. But I think, you know, a lot of what you were talking about there as well was, you know, that doing it for other people, and that kind of looped me into the people pleasing bit that you often talk about as well, and I talk about a lot too, that, you know, we're always doing it for someone else, and that whole people pleasing bit. And how does that connect to self-connection and self-validation, and kind of what helped you to make that shift in yourself? I know you kind of briefly said you started working with a therapist and a coach, but was there a particular moment or something that someone said to you that kind of helped you to shift that?
I mean, there's a few things really, and I would love to say it was a, you know, it was a magic, like this was the light bulb moment and everything changed. It was a slow process, but I do remember having a conversation with my therapist and her saying to me, do you not feel that you maybe need to get a bit more sleep, or do you not feel that you need to, you know, take care of yourself or rest a bit more? And I said to her, no, I just need to adapt. I just need to adapt and be able to cope with less sleep. You know, like Darwin's like evolution. Like I just need to evolve and do this quickly, so that, again, that people pleasing, if I can just adapt and I can just bend and shape and I can just push down everything that I need, like fundamentally, and emotionally as a human, if I can just push that down, I will be this incredible Wonder Woman mum. And she just looked at me and said, would you say the same to someone else? And oh, Debbie, I burst into tears. And I said, no, I wouldn't. And she said, well, who are you doing this for then? And when is it ever going to be enough? Like, what is enough? And I was like, I don't know.
Wow.
It was such a light bulb moment that it was never going to be enough.
Yeah.
And, you know, like no one was there saying, Danielle, you've got to push harder. You've got to, you know, not sleep. You've got to do this. No one, I was doing that, like, you know, with so much love and compassion for myself, but I was doing that to myself. And that was a light bulb moment. And that started that. And then I guess it was then working with a coach who really helped me see the power in I could choose to think something different, and I could choose to do something different. Like we know, Debbie, it's as simple as that, but it's not easy. You know, it takes, you know, practice, and it takes unpacking, you know, what's kind of going in the back, the beliefs that are going on in the background. But I was like, oh my goodness, like, do you mean I can actually change this? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, can I swear on here?
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, holy shit, like I've got the power within me to be able to change this. Yeah. And that was huge. That was like, it was like it hadn't even entered my head that I could let go of, bit by bit, I could let go of that people pleasing and come back to, okay, what do I want? What do I need? Is what I'm doing supporting myself? If it's not, okay, what could I choose to do differently?
Wow. Like I was, those who aren't watching the video on YouTube, I was literally sitting nodding my head through the whole of that, because I think there's so many things that you said, but the bit around fitting the mold and expectations, that was so true for me as well, and so true for many people that I work with. The expectations are in our own heads. It's very rarely, yes, sometimes, you know, families, parents, spouses, you know, work particularly will impose certain expectations on us overtly. But a lot of the time, the expectations in our own head. The mold is in our own head, and we're busting our gut to try and fit this mold, to meet these perceived expectations from other people that they never had in the first place. I mean, I'm sure I've spoken about it before on one of the podcast episodes, but my worth, for me and my journey, my worth was tied to how useful I was to someone. If I wasn't being of use to somebody, I felt invisible. So I would often force my help on them when they didn't even want it, which came across as controlling behavior, which was never ever my intention. But that rang so true. And I think for me, that light bulb moment as well of like, I can choose differently, and I can shift these, perceived expectations in my head. That was so powerful. And I love that you had that similar experience. And I think, as you said, and I've said this many times, and my guests on this podcast have said it too, that as you say, it sounds as simple as that, but it's not easy, and it comes from years sometimes of doing the work, working with coaches. I could have got there myself, but it probably would have been another 10 years down the line probably. But because I was able to work with some wonderful coaches, and some of them who have interviewed on this podcast as well, it helped me get there quicker. And I think that's the beauty of somebody who has gone through the journey, who is now using that. And that's the alchemy bit for me. That's why I call myself the joy alchemist. It's about transmuting and transforming your experiences, the good, the bad, the indifferent, and using that to then help other people, and kind of shine that light and guide the path, so that they're not having to fumble their way in the dark. And because I remember when I first started out, there was so many different people I was following, and I was like, do I do this, do I do that, is it breath work, is it meditation, is it journaling, is it what was somatic work? There was so many different modalities out there. But until I kind of settled on one person that I really kind of resonated with, and started working with her, and then kind of moved on and moved through that's where the big shifts came for me. And while you were talking there, I remember what I was going to say earlier when you were talking about your son and doing it for the people that you love. And I put a post about this a couple of months ago, and it was about pancakes. It was one Sunday morning. I was up and dressed, and my son he's a teenager. He was still in his bed. And I remember sitting thinking, oh, I've not had pancakes for a long time. I really fancy pancakes for my breakfast. And then this was all a conversation in my head. I was thinking, but it's too much hassle to make it just for me. I'll wait until my son wakes up and see if he wants them. And if he wants them, then I'll make them. If he doesn't, then I'll not bother. I'll just have some toast. And then I was like, whoa, why, if I'm prepared to make the pancakes for my son, wouldn't I make them for myself? My son, who I would say I love most in this whole world, why would I not love myself enough to make the pancakes? And so it wasn't about the pancakes. It was about loving myself, and doing something for myself, and giving my inner child those pancakes that I hadn't had for a long time. And that was such a powerful realization that, yes, it started off with doing it for my son, but actually came back to doing it for myself and loving myself enough to do that. And that was this was me 4 years down this spiritual healing journey of having that major light bulb moment on that Sunday morning on the sofa.
Yeah, I love that story. And just I'm nodding along because I'm the same. I'm not like, I think we're never gonna be complete and finished like articles. Like, I am very much still learning this, like unlearning, relearning. It's still ongoing work for me, and I hope I'm always really honest about that, because I don't want anyone to think, oh, well, I've just got it licked. And I never fall into that people pleasing, and I never fall into, so you said about your worth was very much around being of value, and I very much resonate with that. Mine's being of value, but also productivity. Get super busy, and then I've got more worth, and I still dip into that sometimes. But I suppose the difference is now I notice it more and I reframe it, but always with that compassion, because some of those things are deep rooted. It's still working through it. But yeah, I loved your story about the pancakes, and I can really resonate with that. And something that I do with my clients is around things like, okay, look at your shopping list. What's on the shopping list for you? Like, they've got the favorite thing for the kids, for their snacks, and for, you know, for breakfast. Okay, what do you want to have for your lunch? Is that on the shopping list?
Yeah.
You know, and it's little things like that that we can easily dismiss. But like you say, I hear it a lot. Oh, I'll just have the leftovers. I'll just have whatever's left. You know, and that message that is then feeding into you is, I'll have whatever's left, whatever no one else wants. I'll have that.
Yeah. Oh, two things you said there. You know, well, one is words are spells, and as you say, it's the language that we use that absolutely is our unconscious mind is programming it all the time. And like I remember doing a post ages ago, and it's like the subtle signs of people pleasing that aren't the obvious ones of saying yes when you want to say no, kind of, because that's what a lot of people think it is. It's like not making your favorite meal, you know, because nobody else really likes it. Yeah, they'll eat it, but they don't really like it, so you never make your favorite meal. It's, you know, you if well not it should be down to the mum doing all the laundry, but you know, folding everybody's clothes the right way around when you're doing the washing. It's like, well, why do you need to do that? It's like, okay, yeah, if you've got little kids, it's easier for you because you'll be helping them dress. But like, you know, I was doing that for my son. You know, he said he's 17, nearly 18, and I was turning all his t-shirts inside out and folding them neat. And I was like, now I leave them. I save myself time, and if they're inside out, they get folded up inside out because he's old enough to sort himself out. And it was like subtle shifts like that. I was like, why am I standing for hours doing all of this? Yeah, okay, I still do his laundry, but you know, he does sometimes do his own. But anyway, that's a whole other debate and conversation. But I think, you know, I think motherhood shifts our identities quite a lot, and it does really make us see the world through a different lens. And I remember when I went back after having my son, went back to work, like things that I used to get stressed about didn't matter so much. Like I completely kind of shifted my perspective. And yeah, there was kind of other stresses and pressures that came with that. But you know, motherhood and being a mother can change your connection with your inner knowing. But obviously a lot of women aren't mothers. And I'd love to hear how, you know, if you've worked with women who aren't mothers, and how that kind of journey and that inner knowing comes about for them.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, and I do. I mean, you know, some of the women that I work with are mothers. Most of them are, but I've worked with a lot of women that aren't. And often what I see is that narrative of, well, I need to prove in other ways.
Mm.
And that has its own, you know, like not enoughness that comes through, or my worth needs to come in other ways, which just it makes me think about how much it is then embedded in the story about women of how we should fit into society. And so what I see from those women who aren't is, oh, well, I need to be the one giving 150% at work. I need to be the one who's the first one there in the morning and the last one to leave. I need to be the one. It's almost like trying to make up for the fact that they're not a mother.
Yeah.
And their worth is a given. Like their worth was,
yeah.
I know you know this, Debbie, but their worth is a given from the moment that they were born, from their soul even before that. But this idea has been planted that if you're not a mother, then you need to be proving yourself in other ways. Mm-hmm. And it's really dangerous because for mothers, but also for, you know, for women who aren't, the expectation that they're then feeling, the pressure that they're then feeling, you know, we've got a massive issue at the moment with women literally pushing themselves to burnout, to chronic illness, because of the weight of trying to prove their worth. And that's what I see from the women that I work with. And that's why it's about coming back to, you know, what is it that you really want? What is it that you really need? And creating that version of happiness, fulfillment, you know, rather than chasing it, and rather than, you know, trying to fill it with other things, finding that within yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me really angry that we've been taught this.
Yeah.
that we've been taught we're not enough unless we are proving X, Y, and Z. And it has never been, as women, we've never been expected to do as much as we do right now. And there's never been so much comparison. And as we know, it's not a fair comparison, because what we see on social media and in the media in general is not a true reflection.
Yeah.
So we're trying to chase and trying to create and try and be something that's not even real in the first place.
100%. And I think, like I've heard so many people, and when I was, in my career in employment, and friends and family who, and this for women, but I've heard men saying this as well, like who don't have children or have older children. I'll not take my Saturdays off. I'll not take the holidays during the school holidays so that I can allow people with children to take that. And like, and again, I think especially for women, they probably feel that more like, well, I don't have kids, so I'm not going to take the summer holidays because that's peak leave for parents who need childcare, all the rest of it. And it is exactly what you described. They're like, they're having to prove it. It's almost as if they're not worthy of having time off in the summer because they don't have children. And it's like, it was just like another little light bulb that went on about just like how society conditions us into thinking that there's this particular way that makes you worthy. And then you've got the mothers who are not feeling worthy anyway. So nobody's feeling worthy.
No.
If we actually just all took responsibility for ourselves and our worth, then that, the world would be such a better place. And I think one of the other things that you said, there's like, what is it that you really want? And I remember, when somebody asked me that question, and I've tried to reframe how I ask it to my clients as well now, is because I remember when somebody asked me that for the first time, I didn't know. My needs weren't at the bottom of the list. They weren't even on the list. And that was needs. That wasn't even my wants and desires and my dreams and what I really want from life. Like, it took me a long time to feel worthy, even to be able to like identify what it was that I would like to do with my life, what I would like to do with my spare time, all the rest of it. And I think that's for me, and that's why I do so much work around self-worth, because for me, that was my experience. You have to feel worthy of being able to have what you desire to even be able to identify it in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. That question brings up so emotion for clients when I work with them, especially at the beginning, because like you say, we're not brought up to think about that and to connect to that. And I ask the question to allow that emotion to come up, and I know that it's going to bring up emotion because I've seen it time and time again. But I do a lot of work with my clients around nervous system and around emotions, and being able to feel your emotions and not to fear them, because again, as women, as humans, like men very much have been told not to feel their emotions. Women have been very much told not to feel their emotions, and there are gifts, like there are messengers. So I agree, it's a really challenging question to lean into. Think about me, like actually think about me, what I want and what I need. And I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I wonder if we were brought up in a way where we could get curious and we could question and we could explore that, as children, as young children, you are, I very much remember that as my son, like it was very much he led. Who am I kidding? He still leads, but it was very much, what do you want to try? What are you interested in? And we shaped our lives around that. But then you get older, and it's do as the teacher tells you, do as what's the thing? Do as I say, not as I do. Yes. I was very much brought up with that. And we're not taught to question and get curious and explore. Like that's kind of like knocked out of us, isn't it? Whereas if that was nurtured and encouraged throughout life, maybe that question wouldn't be so daunting, and maybe we'd stay more connected to it.
Yeah, I think there could be probably a whole podcast just on that. As I call it, the indoctrination of the 9-to-5 lifestyle. And well, it was for a little bit that I know about it, I think it was really kind of introduced by Henry Ford. It was like, the factory work and a big, get people into this mindset of Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. You get up, you go do your work, you come back, and you have a little bit of time in the evenings, and you have your weekends for rest, and then you're back into that again the next week. And it's just this hamster wheel that you spoke about at the start there as well. And I think, the other bit when you were talking there around that question of what it is that you want or desire in life, sometimes people will start off with the very superficial things like, I want the car, I want the big house, I want the holidays, I want the big salary. And like, that's the superficial things. And my next question usually is like, who are you wanting that for?
Yeah.
And, like, it takes a wee while to get deeper into that, but often it's because that's the perceived success, well, my friends and my family and society will think I'm successful. And I'm like, well, what's the feeling? And it's like, and then we start tapping into the feelings bit. And I actually put a post out this morning about that. It's, manifestation isn't about the bank balance, the figure, the number. It's not about the destination. It's about the feeling. But the you said there, like the work that you do as well is around nervous system regulation. It's like that can feel really scary to have the freedom. I know, like when I was working towards resigning from my employment at the start of this year, I had to do massive amounts of nervous system regulation because that, that freedom that I was craving was within my grasp, but it was bloody scary. It's like, oh my God, what do you mean? I don't have to get up every day at a certain time. And what do you mean? Tied to that means I'm not going to have a consistent salary at the end of every single month, So, yeah, manifestation is great. Vision boards is great. But unless you feel safe and worthy enough of receiving everything that you desire, it's always going to fall flat, or you're always going to sit in that fear position and never actually go for it. So that's why the work that we do as coaches, is so important, because that bit, your unconscious mind, your ego will not let you go there yourself. And I found that with myself as well. I know I can get people there, but my unconscious and my ego won't let me physically. It's like a block. I need somebody to take me deeper every single time, because like I'm just about keeping me safe, and I recognize that. So I know that I need to take that next step. But sometimes you do need somebody to kind of like hold your hand along the way.
Yeah, it's got to feel safe, because otherwise the body goes into shock, and then it's just going to try and protect you over and over again. And that's why, it's so much, we've got to meet ourselves with so much compassion when we do this work. Like it's courageous to be changing beliefs. It's courageous to be honoring your body and creating resonance in your nervous system. It's courageous doing all of the work that we do, and that our incredible clients come on this journey with us. So it's got to be with compassion. Like, we can't beat ourselves up for it, otherwise that would have worked a long time ago.
100%. Yeah, if it was as easy as that, then we could have just like cracked the whip and got ourselves whipped into shape. But no, it has to be with kindness and grace.
Yeah, and the world needs that. Like, the world needs so much kindness and love right now. Like, so we're not going to get into that here, but that starts with how we meet ourselves. Like, if we're at war with ourselves, and that's just going to perpetuate all of that that's happening out in the world. It's got to be an inside job.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to shift lanes ever so slightly as we come to the end of the podcast. So joy is a big focus of the work that I do in this podcast. So what's one way that you prioritize joy in your daily life? And what advice would you give somebody who's struggling to do that for themselves?
I love that you do this. So it is so important. And I very much had to learn that I could create that joy for myself. And we were just talking about this, about feeling safe to be able to enjoy that, because I very much felt that it was fleeting, that I couldn't sit in that joy and enjoyment because something bad would happen, or I needed to get back to work and create it. So it was definitely something that I had to relearn how to. But that daily seeking out the joy, I think, is the real key that you said there. So for me, and this will be so individual for every person, but I think it's finding the things that do actually feel really good for you, and prioritizing those, and knowing that you're worthy of prioritizing those. So for me, that is getting outside, getting out in nature. I have a dog now, so I absolutely love the fact that I've got even more excuse to get outside. But being out in nature absolutely brings so much joy for me. It's very much built in my I suppose like in my soul, like I'm supposed to be out with natural beauty, that just lights me up. And then just making space for that. You know, I know that if I start to feel a bit overwhelmed, I start to feel a bit busy in the mind, and that is a real clear sign that I've moved away from joy and I've moved into the busyness. So stepping outside, taking some nice deep breaths, and then it's just other things for me, like music brings me so much joy, food, connection with people. So it's finding those things that you know and carving out the pockets of space to do that every single day and making that a priority, because everything else will then flow from that. Everything else then feels so much better. I kind of see it as like it's kind of you've sprinkled a little bit of glitter over everything with the joy, and then you're going to bring that back in. Like I used you know, things that I don't enjoy doing, I'm like, okay, how can I bring a little bit of joy into this? Like for me, I'm sure you'll resonate with this, Debbie, like doing my finances, doing like my invoices and doing the spreadsheets and things like that. That doesn't invoke joy in me. So I was like, okay, I need to do this though. So I light a candle, I get my incense oils, I put some nice music on, I'll put my nice cozy cardigan on, and then I'll do my finances, because I've brought a little bit of enjoyment into it. So we've all got things that, you know, we've got to do that you maybe don't enjoy that much. Maybe it's cleaning the house, maybe it's I mean, maybe it's going out for a dog walk in the pouring rain, like maybe you don't relish that. Okay, but can you put your favorite podcast on, or can you put an audiobook on, or your favorite music? Bring the joy into it. That's what we've got the power. We started talking about this at the beginning, like we've got the power to be able to do that and the responsibility to be able to do that, and we're absolutely 100% worthy of it.
I love that so much, and I'm all about those little pockets of joy during the day. And like for me, like it's the tasks that I'm like, oh, okay, right, I just need to sit down and do this thing. As like I go make myself my cup of tea, and I'll just sit for a moment, just pause beforehand, just feel the heat, and you know, and then take a few sips. I'm like, right, okay, good to go, and then in a power through it. And inevitably, it never takes us as long as we think it's going to do. But yeah, that putting the music on with the housewife, that's like one of the things, because I'm like, because I can't always hear it when the Hoover's on, but like I like to test myself, like can I keep the song going? And when I turn the Hoover off, am I still at the same place? So it's like a silly little thing, but it's like it's fun, you know, it brings a little bit of fun into it. Yeah, wonderful tips there, and wonderful insights. So thank you so much for sharing all your story and your insights, Danielle. And the one thing, like there's so many things that stood out for me, but I think the one thing that you said early on in the conversation was from the inside out. And I think that's so important. You know, we often look at the external bits to fix ourselves, and, you know, other people to fix ourselves, and we put that responsibility onto them. But it's taking that self-ownership and self-responsibility. And, you know, you just such a beautiful example of how that, you know, turns your life around and evolves into what other people then experience. And the bit that you were just saying at the end there on the glitter, we all know, like, even if you think you've hoovered and you've dusted, you'll still find bits of glitter like months from now. And it's like if you've sprinkled that joy, that glitter, you know, that ripple effect, you know, won't you might not experience that until 2 weeks from now. And you know, there's that saying that, you know, somewhere someone is still smiling about something you once said, or a kind word or a kind gesture that you've completely forgotten about, but it's still sitting with somebody. And that's that little bit of glitter and a little bit of joy that you sprinkled so long ago that's still there and shining in somebody else's life. So I love that concept.
I love that as well. Thanks for sharing that, Debbie.
So I'm sure that my listeners will want to know a lot more about what you do and about yourself. So where's the best place that they can find you and learn more about your work?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram, Danielle Louise Coaching. You can find me on LinkedIn, Danielle Thornton-Walker. I have a free community that's all about loving ourselves, honoring ourselves, celebrating ourselves, which is the Golden Hearts community in Facebook. But yeah, if you connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn, I can invite you if you want to come into that space.
Amazing. And we'll share all the links to all of that in the show notes as well, so you can access that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation.
It's been gorgeous. It's gone so quick.
It has. I know. I always think when we start these conversations, like, how are we going to fill the time? And then it just flows so beautifully. And that's what I love about doing this podcast as well. So it's been an absolute honor to have you on. And I've, again, always learned so much about, just the work that we do, and it's had some golden nuggets and insights drop in for myself.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me, Debbie, and for holding the space so beautifully.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Your Worth, Your Way. I know that you'll be walking away feeling inspired and ready to embrace your worth and prioritize your joy. If you love this episode, I'd be so grateful if you could leave a review or share it with someone who needs a little bit of encouragement today. And don't forget to hit that follow button so you never miss another episode. And you can connect with me, find out more about the podcast and my guests and what I do at debbielucas.me/links. And if you don't already, follow me on your favorite social media platform. I'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the conversation there. And until next time, remember that you are worthy exactly as you are.